Wait a minute, Doc. Are you telling me you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
Alright, so what is up, fellow YouTubers? Welcome to Extreme Automotive Addiction. My name's Mike, and I appreciate you being here. I'm going to apologize up front. You'll probably hear some road noise as you do in my videos from cars driving by on the street, and you're also going to hear a lot of wind from the doors, the rattling. It's very windy out today, so I do apologize for that. Hopefully the audio will be pretty good. But I figure what better way to start out a DeLorean video than with the movie franchise that really made this car so well known to so many people out there. Back to the Future, the trilogy was a huge success. If you guys haven't seen the movies, they're great movies. I highly recommend them. And the DeLorean was the time traveling machine. And it was great. It just fit so well. The movie fit together really well. It was very well done, very well executed. So a lot of people know this car based on that. And a lot of people, when they see this car, will make references to Back to the Future, you know, the whole 88 miles an hour thing and that whole thing. But there's so much more to this car than that. Now, anybody who follows DeLoreans, who knows the history of John DeLorean, but I feel an obligation to tell the story as I understand it and from what I've read, my research, and talk about the history of this car and kind of where things went wrong and really what I feel it could be had it still been around. John DeLorean started out with Studebaker, his first automotive job as far as I know back in the 50s. He ended up going to work for General Motors and ended up heading up their Pontiac division. He is responsible for cars like the GTO that's sitting here to my left. He was on his way up. He was doing very well. He was rising through the ranks very quickly. Then in 1973, depending on what you want to believe, I've heard both sides of the story, but he was either terminated from GM or he decided to leave GM. And he started his own company, DeLorean Motor Corp, in 1974. Took him a few years to get things off the ground, but he started searching out for plants and things like that where he could manufacture this car, the car of his dreams. Now, the car of his dreams was a little different than the one sitting to my right. The car of his dreams was going to be an all stainless steel body. He wanted to make sure that the car would last forever and never rust. He wanted a mid-engine design. He did not want a rear-engine design. He wanted gull-wing doors. He wanted airbags. So he got a lot of what he wanted, but he did have to settle in some aspects. He did get the gull-wing doors. Makes this car very iconic. It's very well known for the gull-wing doors. He did get the stainless steel body. That's also very well known for this car. He didn't get the mid-engine, had to go with the rear engine because of the design of the car. He didn't get the motor he wanted. He wanted something with a little bit more power than this, had to settle for a Renault 2.8 liter, about 138 horsepower, so nothing earth-shattering, but still wasn't too bad for 1981 when this car first came out. Now, you have to understand that this car was basically put together from start to finish, from the time that they started planning it to the time they got it in production, in about a 2-year span. That's a really fast time frame, especially for 37 years ago. And so subsequently, they were hiring people that weren't maybe the most experienced and were learning as they go. And there were a lot of flaws with the car when it first came out. There was a lot of issues and things like that, but they were getting better. They were learning as they were going, and they were perfecting the car and making it better and making the process better. So it was heading in a good direction. Originally, the DeLorean was called a DMC12 because that was the price it was going to be, $12,000, which was a pretty fair price back in 1981. It ended up being about double that price just because of everything that went into it. Ended up costing a lot more than anticipated. The car didn't last very long. The company only lasted about 2 years before John DeLorean had to declare bankruptcy. And I'm sure a lot of you know, but he got caught up in a drug scandal, got arrested for drug trafficking. He was eventually acquitted of all charges, but the reputation followed him. Even after everything was all said and done, he was interviewed by the media and he said point blank, "Would you buy a used car for me?" So he still had some ideas and some things he wanted to do, but it just never materialized. The company went out. There was a little under 9,000 of these cars made, and it was kind of a done deal. Now, a lot of people will tell you that these cars are underpowered, they handle like slugs, they don't ride good, there's just nothing good about a DeLorean. Based on today's technology and comparing it to today's vehicles, I would agree this car lags far behind. But if you go back to 1981 standards, 1982 when this car first came out, it was actually not too bad. 0 to 60 was around 9 seconds, just a little bit under with the 5-speed, around 10 seconds for an automatic. Nothing earth-shattering even for back then, but it wasn't bad. Definitely wasn't at the bottom of the league. It doesn't ride bad. It's not a bad riding car at all. It doesn't handle that bad, but the rear engine does throw things off a little bit, and you have to compensate for that. It is a little bit of a heavy steering car. The pedals are a little heavy and things like that, but again, I'm going back to 1981. You can't compare to 2018 standards. Like I said, DeLorean was heading in a good direction. They had a plan for a turbocharged model of this engine, and it bumped the horsepower up almost 100 horsepower and gave this car 0 to 60 in the mid 5-second range, which for 1981 was impressive. There wasn't too many cars that were hitting 60 anywhere in that range and performing that well. So I really think if it hadn't been for the whole drug trafficking charges, if maybe John would have taken the company public and gotten some shareholders and some stockholders to come in and assist and develop it further, I actually think that this car would probably still be alive today and still be manufactured for the world to enjoy. But unfortunately it wasn't meant to be, and it's probably for the best, because if it hadn't been, this car wouldn't be nearly as iconic as it has become. For me, it's a bucket list car, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but for me it's just, I'm just in awe of the car. I mean, more in awe probably than of any other car that I own or have ever owned for that matter. You know, some people like them, some people don't, and that's fine. Take them or leave them or what have you. Certainly Back to the Future and using them, this car for their trilogy certainly did make this car and certainly helped to make the car explode. I think it's also it's definitely helped with the popularity, but it's also helped with people this generation who actually could know what the car is by watching the reruns and things like that on TV and seeing this car. It's very unique. Only stainless steel car that I know of. I'm sure there were other ones out there at one point in time, but nothing that was mass produced at this level. And some of them were painted, but really this is truly the way the car was meant to be as you see it in its raw form. Now that did mean if you got in an accident and you had to replace an entire body panel, you couldn't just do a little body work, bondo it up or whatever and repaint it. So there were drawbacks obviously, but the car didn't rust, and here it is 37 years later and the body's actually in really good shape. So at this point, let's take a walk around the car. I will show you the quirks and the idiosyncrasies of the car, the design of the car, look under the hood, we'll look under the trunk, we'll look inside the car, and then we'll take it for a drive, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about why this car is a bucket list car for me, and I'll talk a little bit about the experience of going to get it. So this is the money shot for this car. Those gull wing doors open like that. Kind of mimics a bird. That's what they were trying to do, the gull wing door, so to speak. But this is the iconic shot of this car. This is what really sets it apart, and actually this is the reason it's a bucket list car for me. More to follow on that. So getting in and out of this car is not too bad. Just kind of have to swing yourself in and you're in. No problem at all. Getting out, you just have to watch your head because of the doors, but it's not that bad. It's just, and I just kind of keep my head low until I take one step out. Okay, so we'll take a walk around the car. Stainless steel, the easiest way I have found to clean this car is just with some simple glass cleaner. It takes out the fingerprints. I mean, you can imagine stainless steel refrigerator gets fingerprints. This car gets fingerprints really badly. But nice looking car. I mean, for me, this car does it for me at any angle at all. Now, you'll notice the stance of the car. You're going to immediately notice it's been lowered. And to me, it's got the greatest stance. It's just perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. That is one thing. And the other DeLoreans I looked at, they were all up at more of the stock height. And this car, just that stance, to me, it's phenomenal. And doesn't rub, still rides pretty good. I mean, look at that. It's perfect. Okay, so open the door just like that. And these shocks are in pretty good shape. It pretty much rise all the way up. You have to lift them up a little bit more. Passenger side's a little bit worse, but not bad. Let's take a step inside the DeLorean and take a look at it. First of all, you see the instrument cluster is pretty basic, pretty plain and to the point. You can see that it's got a little over 43,000 miles on the car, but everything's there. Your voltage meter, temperature gauge. Other side you got your oil pressure and fuel. Then you've got your speedometer and your tachometer. Now 85 mile an hour speedometer is what they came with back in the day, and a lot of people make the whole reference about, oh, okay, it's supposed to get up to 88 miles an hour to go back to the future or forward or what have you. But you know what, that's the way they were regulated back in the day. You had to have an 85 mile an hour speedometer, so it is what it is. If you step up and do the performance mods, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, then you can get a 140 mile an hour speedometer. So you see there, it does have an aftermarket stereo. It's just an AM/FM CD player. It does have a subwoofer behind the driver's seat, and it does have a subwoofer amp under the passenger seat. So definitely a little bit of an upgraded sound system. I believe that the speakers are stock. Other than that, they're running the high end, and it actually doesn't sound too bad. It's not great, but it sounds pretty good. Now, lights are right here. Push once for your parking lights, push again for your headlights. Your climate control is right here, hazards right there. So this adjusts your interior light brightness. It does have the nice stainless steel shifter, which I do like. Now here, these buttons right here, these are for the power windows, which, yes, it's just those little mail slot type windows right there, but hey, it is what it is. And then this is the rear window defroster, which I probably hit at least 50 times with my elbow while I've been playing with the stereo. See, the interior is in really good shape. Got a little wear on the bolster right here, but the carpet, everything else is in good shape. All the window rubbers, everything's really tight. It seals really well. I was a little concerned about headroom with this car because you can see it cuts off right here, and it would really be difficult for anyone to fit in this car, but it does have these little indentions right here in the doors, which is perfect. John Delorean was 6'4", and he wanted to be able to fit into the car, so he designed it to where he could fit in the car, and I'm 6 foot and I'm pretty comfortable in the car. Another interesting quirk about the car is that the horn is right there. Yeah, interesting little horn. I was kind of wondering why he did that, and the only solution that I can really come up with is I think he was thinking airbags, and at the time to do airbags and the horn probably wouldn't have worked out, so thus the horn is right there. But it's still the turn signals, and your high and low beam is right there. This is a 5-speed. I wanted a 5-speed. That was very important to me, just because I feel like some cars need to be a 5-speed, and this one definitely needed to be a 5-speed. Going into the other side, you can see that the previous owner did put a fire extinguisher there. It's always confidence inspiring. Behind here is the battery, and then I believe it's right up here. There's a bunch of relays for like a fuse box, and they're all very well labeled. The guy that owned this car, he was pretty good as far as stuff like that, and he didn't drive it very much. I talked to him, but he took really good care of the car, and he's the one that labeled all the relays, so it's kind of nice to have that. Here we have the business end. Like I said, a little 2.8 liter Renault motor. It does have air conditioning. The air conditioning does need to be gone through and charged. Everything blows, but it just doesn't blow cold. But yeah, pretty basic. Exhaust running out the back. I mean, it's very basic. The previous owner did put an alarm system. You see the Clifford alarm over there, and so I can unlock and lock the doors with a remote and turn on like the running lights with it. So, but yeah, nothing too exciting. As far as trunk space, this is what you got. Now, I guess they did come with jumper cables. Again, not very confidence inspiring, but you look in there in that trunk and you could get a couple of suitcases in there as long as they weren't bulky ones. This is where you fill your fuel up. Very simple, just stick the key in, turn it, it unlocks it, you pull the cap up, and it only has a 13-gallon tank, but the car actually does get pretty decent mileage. I haven't tried it, but around 30 miles to the gallon is pretty standard for these cars. Okay, so I did mention performance modifications, and there are performance modifications available for this car that actually make it pretty good. There's a stage 1, 2, and 3 kit. Now, I know the stage 1 is basically just exhaust and deleting the cats, and you get a little bit more out of it, gets a little bit better sound, and it's definitely, from what I've read and seen, notable as far as performance. But you can step all the way up to a stage 3, which goes into the internals of the engine. It's not cheap. It's around 20 grand to do it, I think. I could be wrong. I don't know. Scratch the 20 grand. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's somewhere in that area. I kind of checked on it. And it actually gives the car about an extra 100 horsepower, which pretty notable in a 2,800 pound car. But the problem is when it starts deleting cats and stuff like that, that makes it not smoggable. And in California, that's very, very important. So I'm not going to do any performance mods to this car. I wasn't looking for the car to go fast. That's not my intention at all with this car. I just want to cruise it and enjoy talking to people about it, and just having a good time with it. And I say the same thing every time I drive it. I'm driving a freaking Delorean. How cool is that? As I said before, the car's not going to win any races, any 0 to 60 contests, any quarter-mile contests, or anything like that, but it's not horrible. I mean, it's not like you're going to fall asleep while you're trying to get to 60. It'll get you out in the freeway traffic, and the thing is, with the gearing on it, once you hit 5th gear, you can cruise along at 70, 75 miles an hour without really breathing it heavy or pushing the car at all. You know, it's a smaller engine, it does tack higher, but you're still around 3 grand at like 65, and really that's not bad for this car. And like I said, still doing fairly well as far as the mileage, the fuel mileage. This car did great. We brought it back from the Bay Area. Eddie was driving it, and it just did phenomenally the whole way. We were in stop and go traffic all the time. Clutch never chattered, the car never overheated. We were coming up to Altamont, and sometimes we were stop and go there, and it did a great job. So even Eddie said he was very impressed and had a greater respect for DeLoreans after driving this thing for 3 hours. Now, if you look at the car, you might say it looks a lot like a Lotus, because I know I say that. And that's because the designer, the chief designer, was at one point in time working for Lotus, and Lotus did have a hand in helping with the beginning stages of this car. But to me, there is not a bad angle on this car. I can follow it down the road, I can pull up beside it, I can look at it from the front, I can watch it in my rearview mirror. This car is just, it's badass looking. It looks fast. It's not fast, but it looks fast. And you know, it may not sound great, it may not be fast, but I'll tell you, the looks, in my opinion, and the way that this car is so iconic, it makes this car for me. And I think it's probably the car I'm most excited about. All right, it's a good day. The car started. I do have a new starter for this car coming. Apparently the previous owner said that it was having real difficulty starting. He thought it might have been the battery, so he replaced the battery and it seemed to be okay. But it's still, like it just won't turn over, and I've got to play with the key and turn it and hit it a couple of times, and then it'll finally turn over, but kind of slow, and then it'll start, kind of stutter a little bit, but then once it gets up there, it's fine. So, but today started first try, so that's a good thing, but still a new starter is coming. Now, I do need to have my body guy do a little bit of work on this door. This door isn't fitting quite correctly. It does hit, seatbelt in here. It does hit when you close it, you can hear that, but it's not horribly bad, but I'm gonna have to get Fidel over maybe to tinker with that a little bit. Though these doors, you've got to just get them just perfect, or they will not be happy. If I didn't mention, the emergency brake is over here on the left-hand side. Very similar to a C4 Corvette, almost said Cadillac, C4 Corvette, but the C4 Corvette, the brake will actually drop back down and kind of out of the way, where this one just sticks up, but it's really not in the way to get in and out of the car. I was a little concerned that it might be. So we're going to be going over a relatively bumpy road right here, and the car's pretty tight. Like I said, it rides pretty well. You know, overall the car is not, it's not uncomfortable. It shifts nicely, very easy to shift. I noticed that the clutch and the throttle are a little on the stiffer end, and I noticed with the throttle I've got to push it down about, oh, maybe a half an inch to an inch before I actually get anything. Why do I have a feeling that door is not closed all the way? We're gonna have to pull over here and check the door. One moment. please. It is kind of interesting now that I'm a little bit more aware of it, just having like the whole engine and everything back there. It's just different because I've never owned a rear engine or a mid-engine car before. So, but I mean, I like it. Truthfully, guys, there's just nothing I don't like about this car. Do I wish it was a little faster? Yeah, that'd be nice, but it's not a necessity. It's not a car I want to take on long trips. Absolutely not. But it's not bad. I mean, it's definitely not the worst. You know, brakes okay, but if you need to get into the brakes, they will stop you. I have found that. You know, all the lights and signals work. This car does have daytime running lights, which was kind of unheard of for its time, but it was another safety feature that DeLorean wanted to do. So I figure we'll take it down the freeway, kind of run it at freeway speeds, and I'll share with you kind of why I like this car so much and why it's a bucket list car for me and why it'll probably stay in my shop for a very long time. I mean, we're already doing 75 and I'm just going into 5th gear. And actually I was wrong. I'm about $3 grand right now at about 75 miles an hour. So here's the reason this car is a bucket list car for me. Certainly the movie didn't hurt my love for this car, but when I was in, I want to say 7th, 8th grade, middle school at least, back, you know, it was right around 1982, 83, I went to school with a kid and his grandma had one. And I remember her coming to pick him up a couple of times, and it was just so cool seeing this car pull up, stainless steel body, gull-wing doors, and I mean, all of us kids were just standing out there in awe. You know, our jaws are dropping because it was so cool. It was so amazing. So that did it for me. And then, of course, the movie just kind of added to it. Now, a lot of people have asked me, oh, are you going to make it into a Back to the Future replica? Absolutely not. I have no desire to do that. Other people, it's fine. For me, I want this car just the way it is. Like I said before, I'm going to tint the windows. Last video, you guys have spoken. You want the windows tinted. I will tint the windows. I think it will look good, and that will be done probably later this week. But with the exception of that, replacing the starter, there is one relay that I'm going to need to replace. It's a fan relay, but like I said, the car does not overheat. It does just fine. So it's a lot of fun, and like I said before, to me this car looks good coming, going. It's a freaking DeLorean, you know? When Eddie and I went over to look at this car, I remember the guy pulled it out for me, and he was at a dealership, and he got it down on the street, and I get in it, I get all buckled up, close the door, I look over at Eddie, and I go, I can't believe I'm driving a freaking DeLorean. And I still can't believe it. I still sit here and go, this is so awesome. I mean, the more I drive it, the more I'm like, the smile gets bigger. See, that's what I love. This car gets more thumbs up. Eddie said bringing it home, he was getting people taking pictures, thumbs up, even taking video of the car. It's just cool. You know, I have a lot of cars that get thumbs up and things like that, but it's just cool when you see something like that because they know what this is. So, I'll tell you the story about getting this car. So, I mean, over the years I've looked at DeLoreans and I thought I would like to have one at some point in time. And you know, I look online, see what the prices are, and the prices have steadily went up, and I would just say, no, I'm not ready to do it. I don't want to spend that kind of money on a car. No. Well, finally, I had gotten to the point where I was like, okay, I'm kind of thinking about it, and I just put the Z06 back up for sale again, and I thought, you know, let's see what happens. If I sell the Z06, take it as a sign, I'll have to add a little bit of money to the Z06, but I can do that, and I can buy this car. So I started looking around to see what was out there, and then I happened to see that one out at the car show that I went to, and I just took it as a sign. It's like, oh wow, that really just fired me up right there. And I got to sit in the car, and it was awesome. It was just awesome. I was like a kid in a candy store. I was giddy, and I was giddy about the car all day long. So I come home, and sure enough, about 2 hours later, I get a call from Bill. the guy that ended up buying the Z06. And I just took it as a sign. He gave me the price I wanted for the Z06, and it fell into place perfectly. So by that time, I'd already found 3 DeLoreans here in California I was interested in looking at. One was a stage 1 kid that ended up selling before I could get to it. Worked out for my benefit because it wouldn't have smogged. The other one was in Beverly Hills. It needed some work. It had been sitting for a long time. And then the other one was this one, which I thought had the perfect stance, about 2 hours away over the Bay Area. And I really don't like to go to the Bay Area. I don't like to drive that far. I don't like to go across the bridge. But, you know, for the right car, I'll go about anywhere. And I did. And, you know, Eddie and I went over and looked at it, made him an offer. He wanted to get rid of it. He's selling it for the owner. And it ended up working out very, very well. So, yes, I'm not going to lie. Technically, I did have this car for a little while. I had this car before I actually got to 1,000 subscribers. I know, it's bad. But if you guys know me, you know I was getting the car anyway. So, and I think we're getting to 1,000 subscribers anyway, but I do appreciate the push you guys did. You're awesome. You guys are all awesome. Really, I cannot say and express how much I appreciate you, how much your guys' support means to me, and I just really appreciate it. So, we'll take it down here, and I'm gonna run it through the gears for you, although you probably won't notice any difference, because I did notice when I was getting on the freeway, I was pretty much on the floor just to get up with the flow of traffic. But I can attest, this car will peg the speedometer. It will peg it in 4th gear. I've done it. I figure I probably had it up. I wasn't clocking it with my GPS, but I was probably doing, I don't know, 95, maybe 100 miles an hour, and I still had another gear left. So this car will probably do what they said it would do, about 110 miles an hour. Like I say, it's very tall geared. We're cruising along right now in 3rd gear, about 45 miles an hour, $3 grand. And this thing redlines at 6,500, although I don't think I'd ever take it to redline. Okay, bumpiest roads in the world, and still it doesn't do bad. Okay, we got a little room so I can unleash the power here. So hold on. Yep, that's giving her all the beans right there. We just hit 55. Not going back in time yet. And I'm shifting at about 5 grand. I'm not pushing it. That was about 70 right there. Yes, I do know the Z06 would have been about 125 at that point, but you know what? It's not a DeLorean. This is a freaking DeLorean, people. I'll tell you, I just want to keep on driving it. You know what? And I think I will. This is home, but I'm going on by it. I got to go around the block again. So if you like the video, please do give me a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. If you haven't already and you like this kind of stuff, you need to subscribe to this channel. It's a good time, and there is just so much more coming. Like I said, I got another bucket list car coming probably later on next week, within the next week, definitely. So Instagram P.O. Box will be in the description below. And with that, guys, God bless, take care, have an absolutely amazing day. It's a freaking DeLorean.